Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Leonard Matheson. Welcome to this introduction to the Cognitive Abilities Profiler, or CAP. As occupational therapists, our goal is often to match an individual's capabilities to the demands of a specific role. And this macro-enabled Excel workbook is designed to make that job analysis precise, objective, and deeply rooted in reliable data. The Cognitive Abilities Profiler uses the ONET baseline cognitive abilities derived directly from the ONET 26.1 database supplied by the U.S. Department of Labor, Employment, and Training Administration. This resource is robust, allowing us to compare job requirements against 873 ONET occupational categories, which collectively map to approximately 10,000 job titles. This workbook translates complex occupational data into clear, quantifiable cognitive targets, allowing you to develop highly individualized and evidence-based rehabilitation and job matching programs for your clients. Using the CAP workbook is a straightforward process. Before you begin, download the Excel workbook to a folder on your computer, a safe place where you plan to keep it so that you can return to it if you make an error and want to start over. Set up a separate folder that you can save your work to by using the Save As function and assign a different name to anything you've saved, for instance, the name of the client that you're working with and the date that you use the Cognitive Abilities Profiler for that client. This will help you stay organized and will not write over the original file that you've downloaded and put in a safe place. Now you're ready to launch the profiler. The first time you do this, you'll get a security warning because it contains a small macro that helps you copy and paste the ONET profile for the occupation you're interested in to the part of the workbook that does all the calculations. That's the only thing that the macro does. It's completely safe and will not infect your computer. Understanding what this means, go ahead and click Enable Content so that the macro can be used on your computer. Next, go to the Occupations menu tab to select the occupation that you want to profile. There are 873 occupations alphabetized on this tab that you can select from. Rather than paging through all those occupations, you can use the Excel Find function. To do this, you click Ctrl F and put in part of the name of the occupation. As an example, we used this approach to find the Detectives and Criminal Investigators occupation. Once you have selected the appropriate occupational category, the second step is to populate the data into the analytical tabs. You do this by pressing Ctrl B. This macro command instantly pulls the complex ONET cognitive ability data for that specific job into your view. Now let's take a look at what you've done. The core function of the profiler is to define the cognitive demands of the job target by quantifying the required level and importance of a comprehensive list of cognitive abilities. This provides OTs with a metric-driven profile crucial for vocational planning and rehabilitation. The profiler presents 4 scores for each ability. The level rating indicates how intense or complex the requirement for the ability is in the job. It is shown on 2 scales, a bar scale ranging from 0 to 7, and a corresponding standardized score ranging from 0 to 100. The importance rating indicates how critical that specific ability is to successfully perform job duties. It is shown on a range from 1 to 5 alongside its corresponding standardized score from 0 to 100. The original bar scale rating is what you will be using in the clinic, and the standardized scores will be what you will use to explain your findings to your clinical colleagues and to the patient and their family. For example, when looking at the job profile for detectives, you will see scores for abilities such as number facility, written comprehension, oral expression, deductive reasoning, and selective attention. The analysis also extends to critical perceptual and conceptual abilities like memorization, speed of closure, perceptual speed, spatial orientation, and visualization. You could look at the visual representation of this information on the ONET Abilities chart. There's a lot of information on this chart, so I'd like to help you customize it for your particular client. You'll start by clicking on the empty area in the chart. Any empty area will do. This will bring up a very useful menu in the upper right-hand corner of the chart. We're going to use the value part of that menu, which is represented by a funnel. We're going to click on the funnel, which will tell us what data have been selected to be displayed. As an example, let's unclick the Ability Importance box and then click Apply. What you've just done is to remove the importance ratings from the chart, which makes it much less cluttered. You can use this function to take it back to where you started and to make any changes that you'd like in the data that are displayed. Play with it a little to get comfortable. I find it very helpful to clean up the chart before I present it to my clients and their families. Otherwise, it can be a bit overwhelming. The next thing to do is on the Abilities Comparison tab. This is where you'll put the bar scores that you've been collecting in the clinic. As an example, I've placed the 6 bar scores on cognitive ability variables that we collect with the DCAT for my client, who is a detective and criminal investigator. As you enter the bar scores, the standardized score is automatically generated. Once we've done this, we can begin to talk with our client and their family about the shortfalls that we really need to pay attention to in the clinic. In this particular case, we're most concerned about her shortfalls in oral comprehension and problem sensitivity. She seems to be just fine in terms of time sharing and only slightly below what's necessary for selective attention. But both perceptual speed and visualization would be issues that we're going to think about as well as we make progress with oral comprehension and problem sensitivity. I'd like to explain the O-Net Percentile tab. This chart compares this particular occupation across 21 cognitive ability variables with all of the other 872 occupations in the database. This will be useful in rehab planning or if you're involved in consulting in a forensic case for an older worker who has applied for Social Security disability. To wrap up this short introduction to the Cognitive Abilities Profiler, the last tab contains definitions of each of the 21 cognitive ability variables, along with 3 benchmarks for each ability. You can use this to help interpret what you observe the client doing in the clinic so that you can bridge the gap between your clinical work with the client and what the client is going to need to be successful as they attempt to return to work. So thank you for your interest in our work. We've been very successful in using the Cognitive Abilities Profiler to bridge the gap between what we find in the clinic and what the client is going to face at work. This has been especially helpful in situations in which reasonable accommodations need to be considered. The shortfall between a particular ability and a task's demands can be quantified to determine whether or not and to what degree we need to provide the accommodations.